Greetings, fellow time travelers, to another captivating episode of Ages in Motion. Imagine the echoes of musket fire, the clatter of gold coins changing hands, and the swirl of intrigue stretching from royal palaces to bustling colonial markets. Have you ever puzzled over the curious tale of Britain, straining to keep a hold on its rebellious American colonies, barely a moment after funding a war that spanned the globe? Or marveled at the audacity of France, throwing its support behind the American Revolution, a daring act of defiance against its chief rival? Prepare to plunge into the heart of these fascinating riddles, as we navigate the murky depths of war finance and the twisted labyrinth of economic strategy. Hold on to your tricorn hats, for we're about to embark on an adventure that's sure to tickle your curiosity and fire your imagination. The echoes of the 7 Years' War reverberate far beyond the battlefield, triggering economic transformations that are as riveting as they are far-reaching. This time around, we're stepping off the beaten path and venturing into the unexplored territory of economic transformation. We're about to unlock tales that lie hidden within vaults and marketplaces, tales that put any economics textbook to shame with their narratives. So stay with us, as we traverse the turbulent waters of the 7 Years' War once again, navigating the undercurrents of change that are about to sweep away the old world and usher in a new order. Prepare for a hefty helping of intrigue, seasoned with the tantalizing tang of betrayal and the spice of dramatic economic upheaval. Strap in and enjoy the ride, as we unveil the lesser-known aftermath of a war that forever changed the course of history. The 7 Years' War, you see, was more than a power play among European crowns. It was a high-stakes marathon stretching from royal palaces to bustling merchant houses and overflowing tax coffers. This titanic struggle marked victors, vanquished, and everyone in between. However, the repercussions, often cast into the shadows, are the hidden gems of this saga. So, shall we dust off the economic relics of the past and crack open this time capsule together? The British economy during the 7 Years' War was like the Schrödinger's cat of economic history, seemingly both bursting with wealth and crippled by debt at the same time. Isn't it fascinating, fellow time travelers, how the same war that was turning Britain into a global powerhouse was also driving it toward financial catastrophe? It was like a high-stakes gambler on a winning streak, blind to the mounting debts accumulating in the background. There was no denying that the war was good for business if you were a British merchant or privateer. The merry jingle of coins and the glittering lure of loot from captured French and Spanish ships were a siren song that echoed through London's foggy streets. Spoils of war flowed back to the British Isles, turning merchants into moguls, naval officers into nouveau riche, and London into the beating heart of a new global empire. But here's where the plot thickens, and our British friends discover the age-old truth: there's no such thing as a free lunch, even in war. For beneath the sheen of prosperity, the British economy was dancing on a volcano of debt. The financial burden of waging a global war was just too enormous. The cost of the war was as relentless as a Spanish galleon in full sail. By the end of the war, Britain was staggering under a national debt that had skyrocketed to an eye-watering £133 million, a sum so massive that it would make a pirate king swoon. This led Britain to hatch a rather desperate plan: it was time for the colonies to pay their dues. After all, hadn't they just protected them from the French and their Native American allies? Enter the infamous Stamp Act, Sugar Act, and Townshend Act, a trifecta of taxation designed to squeeze every last penny from the colonists to fund the war debts. Unfortunately, these new tax policies had all the popularity of a skunk at a garden party. The seeds of rebellion, unknowingly sown by the British themselves, started to sprout in the heart of their American colonies. Meanwhile, on the high seas, the 7 Years' War had completely upended the rules of trade. Britain's ever-growing naval supremacy allowed it to elbow out France and Spain from their treasured trade routes. The colonial masters were forcibly uninvited from the lucrative global commerce party. In their place, the enterprising traders of the rising British Empire swooped in like seagulls on a picnic, establishing new trade networks and reaping handsome profits. Yes, Britannia ruled the waves, and where she ruled, the money flowed. So, there you have it, friends, the strange, paradoxical tale of the British economy during the 7 Years' War. A wild roller coaster ride, filled with thrilling highs, stomach-churning lows, and more than a few unexpected twists. And as our dear British friends were soon to find out, the ride was far from over. Now, let's turn our gaze toward the land of wine and baguettes. Imagine, if you will, France, once the belle of the colonial ball, now standing by the punch bowl, watching as Britain takes its territories for a spin on the dance floor. It wasn't just the loss of New France and trading outposts that caused the pain, but the very lifeblood of the French economy was draining away with it. For France, these territorial losses were like a hole in a wine cask, leaking the precious claret of economic prosperity into the sawdust-covered floor of history. But the woes of France didn't stop at lost territories. No, it was just the beginning of a storm that was brewing over the country's economic landscape. With each passing year of the 7 Years' War, France's national debt was ballooning like a revolutionary's waistcoat. High taxation was the order of the day as the coffers dwindled and the government's appetite for war expenses remained unsated. In the winding, shadowy alleyways of Paris, and across the fertile fields of the French countryside, the drumbeat of social inequality grew louder. The stage was set for a social and economic revolution. Now, don't imagine for a minute that the French were simply wallowing in their misfortune. Au contraire, my friends. As Britain's gaze was fixed on its rebellious American colonies, France, like a cunning fox, was quietly pursuing its own game. It was time to make an audacious wager on the turn of the cards. It was time to support the American Revolution. Why would France, groaning under its own economic hardships, gamble precious resources on a revolution brewing across the Atlantic? The answer lies in a cunning economic strategy and a hearty dose of good old-fashioned revenge. By aiding the American Revolution, France sought to strike a double blow, firstly, to weaken its nemesis, Britain, by severing a vital source of its income, and secondly, to claw back its colonial influence. France was playing a high-stakes game of geopolitical poker, and the American Revolution was its ace in the hole. As we can see, the French were far from idle. The 7 Years' War was not just a military conflict for France, it was a daring economic gambit, an audacious attempt to tip the scales of fortune back in its favor. And though they faced hardships and losses, the French weren't quite ready to fold their hand. Yet. Their resilience in the face of adversity would lay the groundwork for the tumultuous and transformative events of the years to come. Ah, the dust of history, it has a funny way of settling on one story while stirring up another, doesn't it? And so it was with the end of the 7 Years' War. Even as the echoes of cannon fire faded, the drumbeats of economic change were just beginning to crescendo. Imagine, if you will, a colossal game of global chess, where the pieces are nations, and the pawns are economies. The war had not only changed the positions on the board but had effectively toppled the king and crowned a new one. Britain, resplendent in its newly minted status as the world's leading colonial and naval power, was the apparent victor. And yet, beneath the triumphant exterior, it was like a panto hero with stage fright, glittering in the spotlight, but trembling behind the scenes. The insatiable beast of war had feasted on its economic strength, leaving behind a gnawing debt void. The victory was sweet, but the aftertaste was bitter indeed. The economic tremors triggered by the war were felt across the globe, creating ripples that would eventually swell into waves of change. The fiscal strain of the 7 Years' War lit the fuse for a chain reaction that would soon explode onto the world stage. On the one hand, it helped fuel the fires of American independence. On the other, it sparked the French Revolution, the shockwaves of which are still felt today. But let's not reduce the 7 Years' War to merely a struggle for territory or dominance among European powers. That's like calling Mozart's Symphony No. 40 a pleasant melody, accurate, yes, but it misses the depth and complexity of the masterpiece. The war was a grand opera of economic strategies, a saga of financial resilience, and a chess match of geopolitical maneuvering. It was an epic testament to the shifting fortunes of mighty empires, a turning of the pages in the grand book of world history. The 7 Years' War, for all its bloodshed and destruction, was the crucible in which the modern world was forged. The economic legacy of the war, like a master sculptor, chiseled away at the old world order and laid the foundation for the geopolitical landscape we're all too familiar with today. The globe had been spun, and the maps redrawn. The world had changed, and at the heart of it all was a 7-year-long war that proved, once again, that the fortunes of nations are in constant motion. So buckle up, for the ripple effects of the war are far from over. As we travel further down the road of history, the twists and turns get ever more fascinating. And as we're about to see, the shadow of the 7 Years' War looms large over the events that followed. As we close this chapter, the tale of shifting fortunes continues to resonate, reminding us of the intricate connections between war, economy, and the rise and fall of empires. Remember to gently push that subscribe button and the notification bell to join us in the next riveting installment, where we'll dive headlong into the political consequences of the 7 Years' War. If you thought the economic upheavals were game changers, just wait until we unearth the political shifts that accompanied them. The story is far from over, and the age of revolutions is just beginning. Join us as we continue this tumultuous journey through the ages in motion. Until next time, keep the wheels of time turning.